I'm advocating for Tory Lanez because the evidence shows that he's innocent, and he deserves to be pardoned by Governor Gavin Newsom. You know, he's 100% exonerated from the gun. And for that alone, he should be home with his family.
Mr. Peterson never shot anybody, never even touched that gun, never fired the gun.
I heard the whole story from Tory's mouth. He called me personally from prison, and I now understand why he said sorry, and it's not for any shooting at all. So I'll let him tell that story when he comes home. But the sorry was not for what people think it was.
Tory Lanez was stabbed 14 times by another inmate at a California prison. He suffered 2 collapsed lungs, but we are told he is now breathing on his own.
The girl comes out of the rear passenger, and she goes through the front passenger.
Yes.
And she opens up the car door.
Yes.
And then what happens?
They start they're screaming and shouting at each other, and they start fighting.
The 2 girls.
Yeah, I can see one like feet coming out trying to kick her, and the other one's fighting, and then the passenger gets out.
I am 100% excluded, not inconclusive like they said when I was in trial. I'm 100% excluded from this gun when it comes to DNA.
Tory Lanez isn't just trending. He's turning the justice system upside down. What started as a tabloid headline about a celebrity shooting has exploded into a full-blown political saga with whispers of corruption, prison stabbings, celebrity endorsements, and a last-minute scramble for a presidential pardon. Powerful figures are speaking out. Strange alliances are forming. And just when you think it can't get messier, new evidence surfaces that could unravel everything we thought we knew about that night. Is Tory Lanez an innocent man caught in a media firestorm, or the centerpiece of a cover-up far bigger than any of us imagined? Buckle up, because this case isn't cooling off. It's just catching fire. It's the kind of twist no one saw coming, but everyone's talking about. Just 2 years after Tory Lanez was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the shooting of Megan Thee Stallion, whispers have turned into a roar. There's now a coordinated push for a presidential pardon. Yes, you heard that right. A convicted rapper with a high-profile case steeped in drama, celebrity, and controversy may now have a shot at total exoneration from the highest office in the land. It's not just legal teams working behind the scenes. This is a full-blown celebrity-backed campaign, packed with Hollywood elite, industry moguls, and viral support that has stunned even longtime court watchers. But this isn't just about freedom for one man. This is about political interference, media manipulation, and the increasingly blurred line between fame, influence, and justice. The calls for clemency aren't coming from nowhere. There's explosive new evidence allegedly buried during the original trial, and it's shaking the foundation of everything we thought we knew about the case. Was Tory Lanez set up? Was the public misled by selective media framing? And most chilling of all, has Megan Thee Stallion been used as a pawn in a much larger game? The stakes here couldn't be higher. Because if Tory walks free, not through appeals but through a presidential signature, it could shatter trust in the justice system, ignite a gender war online, and redefine what cancel culture really means. It could also destroy careers, reputations, and alliances in both the music industry and Hollywood. This isn't just a legal battle. It's a war for public opinion. And the battlefield is social media. And leading the charge, some of the most controversial and influential celebrities alive. The first shot was fired by none other than Amber Rose, and it wasn't subtle. In a now viral podcast interview, Amber claimed she was in direct contact with Tory Lanez from prison, and what he told her left her speechless. According to her, Tory was railroaded, and the evidence he has now will blow the case wide open. She even went as far as to say, "I don't think he shot her." Amber doubled down, saying she believed he was targeted by the media, by the industry, and maybe even by people much higher up. And let's be clear, Amber Rose doesn't speak unless she's ready for war. Her endorsement wasn't just a statement. It was a signal. Within hours, hashtags like #Freedery and #JusticeForTory began trending again. People started re-examining trial footage, re-watching old interviews, dissecting old tweets. And then Drake entered the chat. No long-winded defense. No messy podcast appearances. Just a single photo on Instagram, a black and white throwback of him and Tory Lanez in the studio. No caption, no context, but the message was clear. He's watching. Drake, whose silence during the trial was deafening, chose this exact moment, during talks of a pardon, to break it. The timing wasn't lost on fans. In fact, some insiders believe Drake has been working behind the scenes to support Tory's legal team financially. And while that hasn't been confirmed, what has emerged is a pattern. Celebrities who were quiet during the trial are suddenly speaking up now. Chris Brown, who's never been shy about calling out double standards, liked Amber's interview clip and shared a cryptic Instagram story about truth always coming to light. That same day, Tory's sister posted a photo of a top-tier legal dream team with a caption, "We ready." A$AP Rocky liked a tweet suggesting the case against Tory is unraveling. Kim Kardashian, who's known for her work on criminal justice reform, followed Tory's father on Instagram last week. A coincidence? Maybe. But fans quickly noticed she also liked a tweet about wrongful convictions. Add to that her ongoing legal activism, and now the whispers begin. Is Kim preparing to advocate for Tory, too? And then there's Justin Bieber, who hasn't spoken publicly, but whose actions raised eyebrows. Last month, he was spotted wearing a one umbrella hoodie, Tory Lanez brand. Paparazzi photos caught him in LA, grinning, seemingly unbothered. The same day, Tory's management posted a prayer hands emoji on Twitter with no context. Coincidence? Or coordinated? What we're witnessing isn't just a few random celebrities showing support. It's a slow-moving, high-stakes credibility shift, where influencers are carefully dipping their toes into the water, watching how the public reacts before jumping all the way in. But make no mistake, their involvement is strategic. And behind closed doors, there's talk that if this pardon actually happens, if Tory Lanez walks free, some of these names could be called to testify on his behalf in a documentary, or even sit down with him in tell-all interviews. Netflix, Hulu, and even Amazon are already rumored to be circling the story like vultures. This is more than a campaign for freedom. It's a celebrity-backed, media-fueled, full-throttle rebranding of Tory Lanez as the victim, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. If you blinked, you might have missed it. But those who pay attention, they're already screaming it from the digital rooftops. Something is shifting, and not just behind closed doors, but out in the open on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and TikTok. What started as a whisper of support for Tory Lanez has morphed into a full-blown fan rebellion, with social media becoming the new courtroom, and the comments section, the jury. It began with a few subtle moves. An unfollow here, a cryptic like there. Megan Thee Stallion's name started quietly disappearing from playlists. TikTok creators began revisiting courtroom footage, questioning witness credibility, and digging into Kelsey Harris's testimony like amateur detectives. One TikTok with over 10 million views even claims to have found proof that the prosecution withheld key information. True or not, it's going viral. And that's all that matters right now. Every repost of an old Megan interview is now followed by side eyes in the comments. Every screenshot of Tory's prison messages is met with a flood of hashtags like hashtag Justice for Tory and hashtag Megan lied, sparking heated debates that stretch for hundreds of comments. But this isn't just online bickering. For fans, likes are now loyalty tests, and streaming choices are political statements. Spotify saw a 17% bump in Tory's streaming numbers after Amber Rose's interview. Megan's, meanwhile, plateaued, a rare occurrence for a mainstream female rapper. On Twitter, fans started tracking who's following whom like it's a stock market ticker. And when Megan's longtime stylist quietly unfollowed her on Instagram, people noticed. They always notice. But here's what really flipped the script. People are starting to say the quiet part out loud. That maybe, just maybe, the justice system got it wrong. That maybe the media was too eager to paint a black woman as a perfect victim and a black man as a perfect villain. And once that door opened, it couldn't be closed. This isn't just a fandom war anymore. It's a cultural referendum, and the culture is shifting. Then, like something out of a Netflix drama, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna entered the chat. And suddenly, this story took a hard political turn. The Republican representative from Florida made headlines after tweeting that she had reviewed documents related to Tory Lanez's case that raised serious questions about the conviction. She didn't stop there. She claimed her office had been in contact with Tory's legal team and would be pushing for the case to be reopened on grounds of prosecutorial misconduct. Let that sink in. A sitting U.S. Congresswoman is going on record to suggest Tory Lanez may have been wrongfully convicted, and she's promising new evidence. But why her? And why now? Well, here's where it gets explosive. Conservative influencers like Candace Owens and Officer Tatum have already floated Tory's case as the latest example of liberal cancel culture gone too far. They argue that Tory, a successful black man who didn't bow to industry elites, was targeted. Now, Anna Paulina Luna is using that same logic to launch what some are calling a culture war Hail Mary. It's a wild reversal. Conservative lawmakers, yes, the same ones who've spent decades demonizing hip-hop culture, are now defending a black rapper in the name of truth, due process, and free speech. Meanwhile, liberal Hollywood, which once stood by Meghan with awards and applause, has gone strangely silent. No Grammy speeches. No Instagram solidarity posts. Nothing. Suddenly, it's not just about Tory and Meghan. It's about what happens when politics, race, gender, and celebrity collide, and who's allowed to speak when the narrative starts to fracture. The question on everyone's lips now, is this a calculated political stunt, or is this the beginning of a second trial? One in the court of public opinion? And just when a noise reached deafening levels, Megan Thee Stallion broke her silence. No tears, no interviews, no backpedaling, just a firm, defiant statement on her Instagram stories, written in all caps. He shot me. Facts don't lie. Those 5 words cut through the noise like a blade. No hashtags, no emojis, no elaboration. Just raw, pointed truth, at least her truth. For her fans, it was a moment of clarity. A reminder that Meghan has always stood firm in her story, even while facing death threats, slut-shaming, and public gaslighting. Her supporters flooded the comments with blue hearts, crying emojis, and hashtag #WeStandWithMeghan hashtags. But this time, the response wasn't universal support, because now, that same post was met with skepticism, question marks, and eye-roll emojis. Some fans responded with court transcripts. Others reposted Kelsey Harris's conflicting statements from the trial. A few even tagged Anna Paulina Luna beneath the post. The tone had changed. The internet was no longer united behind her. And Meghan knows it. That's why, sources say, she's lawyered up again, not just for protection, but for control. Control over the narrative, over the brand, and over the fallout if Tory Lanez is pardoned. Because if that happens, Meghan's entire public persona, from the survivor speeches to the brand deals to the Grammy moments, will be called into question, not just by trolls, but by people with power. And the worst part? There may be nothing she can do to stop it. Because this isn't just about who's right and who's wrong anymore. It's about whose version of the truth the public is willing to believe. And that battle is still very much underway. The headlines barely captured the horror. Tory Lanez, real name Daystar Peterson, was reportedly stabbed 14 times inside a California state prison. 14. Not 1, not 2, but 14 puncture wounds, and yet barely a whisper from major media outlets. No mugshots, no warden statement, just a vague note that a high-profile inmate suffered non-life-threatening injuries. But behind bars, whispers tell a different story. This wasn't a random fight. It was a hit. Sources inside the facility claimed Tory had been receiving threats for weeks. Not from gangs, but from individuals who had a reason to keep him quiet. One former guard alleges Tory had been moved to protective custody months earlier after expressing concerns about industry retaliation. What kind of retaliation? That depends on who you ask. Some believe this connects directly to the Roc Nation conspiracy Tory alluded to before his sentencing, when he claimed he was being used as a scapegoat by powerful music executives. That conspiracy, once dismissed as paranoid rambling, now has a body count, or it almost did. Because here's the chilling part. None of his injuries hit vital organs. Whoever did this, they didn't want him dead. They wanted him silenced, wounded, and rattled. A message, not a murder. And Tory's silence since the attack? Deafening. No press release. No interviews. Just one cryptic message leaked from prison. They try to break me, but God has the final say. And just when the dust began to settle, Kelsey Harris came roaring back into the spotlight. Megan, the stallion's former best friend. The woman who was there that night. The woman whose own gunpowder residue test came back positive. But in court, Kelsey did something no one expected. She pled the fifth, refused to answer critical questions, dodged specifics, claimed she didn't remember key events, even after being granted immunity. And that raised red flags. Fans, journalists, and even legal analysts began to dig. What they found only added to the confusion. Witnesses outside the courtroom say Kelsey and Megan's relationship was already fractured before the shooting. Some say it was about jealousy. Others say it was about betrayal. But the night of the incident, Kelsey was texting Megan's bodyguard with a message that would later be read in court. Help. Tory shot Meg. Sounds damning. Until the bodyguard, Justin Edison, came forward months later and contradicted her story. In leaked audio, he claims Kelsey was the one acting erratically, screaming that Tory had ruined everything. She reportedly told Edison that Megan was drunk, out of control, and fighting her, not Tory. Even more bombshell, an alleged new audio clip surfaced from a jailhouse call between Kelsey and a third party, where she says she's not taking the fall for nobody, and they're trying to flip this on me. So what's the truth? Did Kelsey witness a shooting, or was she involved in one? Why the sudden memory loss? Why the immunity deal? And why, despite being at the center of the biggest trial in hip-hop in years, has Kelsey Harris vanished from the public like she never existed? Then came the statement that reignited the entire firestorm. From behind prison walls, Tory Lanez managed to get a message. And it wasn't vague. It was pointed, scientific, and damning. I was 100% excluded from the DNA found on the gun. Not inconclusive. Not partial. I was excluded. The prosecution hid that from the jury. You could almost hear the internet freeze. Wait, excluded? As in, the one piece of physical evidence tying him to the weapon didn't even match his DNA? Legal analysts quickly scrambled to explain that while the DNA on the magazine was inconclusive, the actual gun itself had no trace of Tory's DNA. But that detail somehow never made it front and center during the trial. It was buried under emotional testimony, viral hashtags, and the assumption that the media had already decided he was guilty. Now fans, bloggers, and even retired prosecutors are asking, was the trial compromised? Was evidence misrepresented? Or worse, intentionally buried? One prominent legal voice even went so far as to say, if a jury heard this evidence fresh today, in the current public climate, there's a good chance we'd be looking at a mistrial or a full acquittal. But the biggest question is this. Why didn't we know this sooner? Why did it take Tory getting stabbed, celebrities getting dragged, a GOP congresswoman stepping in, and bodyguard testimony unraveling before this DNA bombshell gained traction? And now that it has, this isn't just a question of guilt or innocence. This is about who controls the narrative and what happens when the truth doesn't fit the headline. Just when the internet thought the case was over, a shocking claim emerged from the fringes of mainstream media. A claim so explosive, it threatens to unravel the entire prosecution narrative. A grassroots criminal justice organization, originally founded to fight wrongful convictions, stepped forward with a bombshell. Kelsey Harris allegedly confessed, off record, to being the one who fired the gun. Not in court, not on paper, but in a conversation with a prison reform advocate who claims the moment was so disturbing, he felt morally obligated to speak up. According to the whistleblower, Kelsey broke down in tears while discussing the emotional pressure of that night, caught between a best friend, an ex-lover, and a situation spiraling out of control. She allegedly admitted that a struggle in the SUV over the gun escalated into an accidental discharge, but by the time the dust settled, the media had picked their villain. Suddenly, the entire narrative, the Tory aimed and fired version, starts to crack. Eyewitnesses had already testified that a physical fight broke out between Meghan and Kelsey moments before shots were fired. One neighbor even claimed the gunfire sounded like it came from two different sources: pop, pop, pause, then more shots. The courtroom timeline had never quite accounted for that chaos. And now, fans are asking, was this truly an open and shut case, or a media-fueled rush to judgment? More troubling? The people shouting this the loudest aren't just fans. They're lawyers, activists, even former prosecutors who say something doesn't add up. Because if Kelsey did confess in private and the prosecution knew, then Tory wasn't just wrongly convicted. He was strategically silenced. And that brings us back to Daystar's father, Sunstar Peterson, whose courthouse outburst was dismissed by some as grief, but now reads more like a prophecy. On the day of Tory's sentencing, his father stood on courthouse steps and publicly named Jay-Z and Roc Nation as the shadowy hands behind his son's downfall. Cameras rolled as he shouted into microphones. "You will crumble. Roc Nation, you will crumble. You sold your soul." At the time, it was seen as a desperate man lashing out. But now, with new witness contradictions, DNA disputes, political figures stepping in, and an alleged off-record confession, Sunstar's words are being re-evaluated, not as theatrics, but as a warning. Online, conspiracy theories are snowballing. Reddit threads, TikToks, and Twitter spaces are ablaze with questions. Why did Roc Nation allegedly offer Meghan legal protection immediately after the shooting? Why was Tory's legal team allegedly denied access to certain discovery documents until the trial had already begun? Why did multiple blogs that supported Tory get hit with cease and desist notices from unnamed PR firms? And here's the real kicker. Insiders claim Tory was offered a plea deal early on, but he refused it, insisting he was innocent. If he had taken the deal, he'd likely be free by now. But instead, he gambled on the truth and lost. Or did he? Because now, with the cultural tide turning, even neutral observers are asking if power players in the industry, allegedly including Roc Nation, manipulated the narrative for their own protection. And Tory's father? He isn't backing down. He's now working with a team of civil rights lawyers, private investigators, and media strategists. His goal? To expose every single lie that buried my son alive. 3 years, dozens of court dates, viral hashtags, death threats, a prison stabbing, a possible confession, a father's crusade, and now, a presidential pardon petition gaining traction. This is no longer just about a shooting outside a Hollywood party. This is about power, perception, and the battle for truth in the age of algorithms. Tory Lanez's case has become the ultimate Rorschach test. What you believe depends on who you trust. Is he a violent abuser who finally faced consequences? Or a scapegoat crushed under the weight of celebrity politics, industry vengeance, and media bias? Because here's what we do know. The DNA doesn't match. The witnesses contradict each other. And the story keeps evolving, long after the judge slammed the gavel. So now the world waits. Will Tory Lanez be exonerated through new evidence and public pressure? Or is this all just the most well-funded, strategically executed PR campaign the hip-hop world has ever seen? One thing is certain. This case refuses to die. And in the end, the truth may not just free a man. It may burn down everything we thought we knew about justice, celebrity, and control.